The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
Okay, let's go.
It is the fastest growing international crime network that the world has ever seen. It has already passed the illegal arms trade, and soon it's gonna pass the drug trade. Because you can sell a bag of cocaine one time to a child 5 to 10 times a day. God's children are not for sale.
All right, now how was that for an intro? Hey everybody, it's Ray Doustdar, Deep Shallow Dive. Happy Monday, and I hope everybody had a good weekend. And you know, we're going to start this week off with a deep shallow dive into something I've been wanting to cover really from the moment I decided to do this podcast, and that is the Sound of Freedom movie, the highly controversial, which blows my mind that it is, Sound of Freedom movie that came out, maybe 2 months ago. And today I'm going to do a real deep, shallow dive on, just what the movie's all about. We're going to have some amazing clips that I found over the weekend from, 15 years ago when Tim Ballard was actually crowned a hero on CBS News and everybody loved him for what he was doing. And the entire story is just a reflection on, the changing of the times. And so, the point of this, first of all, the point of it is two things. One is, this is incredible that we're not all on the same page about child sex trafficking. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this is ridiculous that this world is in a place where a topic that black and white is being grayed out. And then secondly, this also is going to really speak to, kind of the narratives that get created. I've talked about this a few different times now. I've talked about the mainstream media creating, narratives for different agendas. And, I think this is a great example of something that technically is not political, but obviously there's undertones that will echo in politics, or I should say more with potentially politicians that are involved in this type of stuff, is as insane as that is to think about. But anyway, I think you're going to really enjoy this today. I did want to kind of give a little bit of a warning. I mean, not a crazy bad warning or anything, but if you haven't seen the movie or heard anything about the movie, I do want to let you know the content is a little bit heavy. This is definitely an overall heavy content. And then even in some of the clips where you're hearing from Tim Ballard 15 years ago, or you're hearing from other people, and, at the end, we're going to hear from Jeffrey Epstein, believe it or not. And some of the content is heavy, but, I really encourage you to try and listen to this. This is another episode that I'm incredibly proud of because this is a real issue. This is an absolute real issue, and it's one that needs attention. And quite frankly, it's one that should be solved. That blows me away. All right, so this first clip that I'm going to play for you guys is one of the executive producers. His name is Eduardo Verástegui, and he's a Mexican-born actor. And this guy actually used to be like a runway supermodel, and pretty amazing his story as well. But he, along with Jim Caviezel, were two of the really driving forces behind getting this movie finally created, along with obviously Tim Ballard. Okay, give a listen.
These kids are being raped 10 to 15 times a day for 10 years, for many years. And after that, some of them, they kill them, they open them, and they sell their organs.
I wanted to play that first because, first of all, that's insane. That's insane. And it's true. If you go and research this stuff and look up very reputable sources, the concept of a child being put to work as a sex trafficker and working 10 to 15 times a day, I'm not going to spell that out for you. You understand what I mean when I say working 10 to 15 times a day. That's just unfathomable. But the other part of this is that at the end, there's a whole organ trading business out there. We're not going to get into that today, but think about that. That's like part 2 of this is the harvesting and selling of children's organs. God, I can't even believe I'm doing this episode, but I have to. All right, next is an amazing clip from 2014, so almost a decade ago. And this was Scott Pelley on CBS News doing a segment on Tim Ballard. And again, 2014. So this is before Trump. This is before, quite frankly, the world dove into madness. And what I find interesting is in 2014, Tim Ballard was a hero. And he should be a hero. He should be a hero in 2023, let alone 2014. This guy's dedicated his life to doing something less than 0.1% of the population would do. So give a listen to this. This is very, very interesting. And then this will be the first introduction to hearing from Tim himself.
Last weekend, police broke up a major sex trafficking ring in Colombia, which has become a destination for tourists looking for sex with boys and girls. The police had help from an American who went undercover to rescue the children, and Elaine Quijano met him.
Tim Ballard has one mission: to track down child traffickers. 4 months ago, Colombian authorities asked him to investigate a tip that children were being sold there as sex slaves.
Within a half hour, this individual walks up to me, starts asking me what I'm here for, what I want, and within minutes, he says, well, I've got kids as young as 11 years old.
Ballard, a former Homeland Security agent, now heads up Operation Underground Railroad, a nonprofit group that rescues trafficked kids.
This little 11-year-old boy, I remember, he asked one of my operatives if they could give him some cocaine or something. He said, they usually give me something because I'm really scared. Before I got in the boat, we had to walk by this room where the kids were, and they put their hand up. And I touched their hand. And there's liberation now.
I mean, that's insane. That's insane. An 11-year-old boy asking for cocaine in order to be able to deal with the situation. My niece and nephew are 12, and I can't even imagine anybody making them do anything remotely like that. And if they did, what I would do to that person. I mean, oh my God. All right. So next, there's another clip I want to play from the producer Eduardo, and he talks about the United States and Mexico. But then the other thing that I want to introduce is he talks about how he got involved in this 8 years ago, and then from there we're going to go into some mainstream media clips that came out. The first was on the Epoch Times, and then the second was Jesse Waters interviewing Tim Ballard. And again, listen to what Tim Ballard says here. He talks about how this is being dubbed a QAnon conspiracy, and they created this movie 6 years ago or 5 years ago, like before the term QAnon was even born. So give this a listen. This is another just great segment, and it's another example of how, spin happens before I get into more of the media examples.
When you hear things like this, man, I couldn't sleep for days. This is a big, big global problem, especially U.S. and Mexico. U.S. is the number one consumer of child sex in the world. Mexico is the number one provider. When you hear what these children are going through, there is no way I can look the other way around and just, do nothing. I have to do something. And I hope that the people, when they see the film, they will ask themselves what I asked myself 8 years ago.
But establishment news outlets are attacking the film. Why? Well, the movie exposes a story of global child sex trafficking, and the legacy news outlets claim this is all QAnon conspiracy.
I can't understand it. The film was made, produced, written like 6 years ago, way before anyone heard the name QAnon. I still don't even know what QAnon is. In the meantime, they're trying to connect it to some conspiracy when, in fact, like you said, this is a true story. These are real kids. This is a true story. These are real kids. This is a true story. These are real kids.
All right. I had to take a crack at some editing skills and try and reinforce what he said at the end. But this is a true story. These are real kids. I mean, real kids that this is happening to. Okay. If you haven't seen the movie, one of the stars of the film is Mira Sorvino. And gosh, you haven't really heard too much from her, but you probably will remember who she is. She was in Romy and Michelle's high school reunion. I did not see that. But also in a movie called Beautiful Girls, which I did see, and that was actually a great movie. But anyway, listen to Mira Sorvino, and then from there I'm going to play a clip from 2017 from Ashton Kutcher, who was testifying in front of, I think, the Senate or a House Judiciary Committee. And again, Ashton Kutcher right now is under a lot of scrutiny and heat in regards to the Danny Masterson conviction and his support, along with Mila Kunis's support for their friend. So that's not about this. This is his interview goes back to 2017, and he's been very actively involved in, the child sex trafficking stuff as well. So give a listen to Mira, and then it's going to roll right into Ashton Kutcher.
Sexual trafficking, I think, hits a real nerve for everybody, especially child sex trafficking. There is really nothing worse that we can imagine befalling innocent children.
I've met victims that have been trafficked from Mexico, victims in New York and New Jersey and all across our country. I've been on FBI raids where I've seen things that no person should ever see. I've seen video content of a child that's the same age as mine being raped by an American man that was a sex tourist in Cambodia. And this child was so conditioned by her environment that she thought she was engaging in play.
There's video of that testimony that Ashton Kutcher gave, and I mean, it's powerful. It's powerful stuff. And again, remember, that was 2017. The other thing I want to say about this before we get into, the clips from CNN and Rolling Stone and The Guardian that try to discredit this entire, really this entire movement, is that why would these people make this up? Why would Ashton Kutcher of all people, dude's got tons of money. He's an angel investor in a lot of companies. Obviously, he's got the Hollywood career behind him. I don't think he's really involved in Hollywood that much anymore, but he's got fame. He's got fortune. Why would he make this stuff up? Why would he do that? Because he's not making it up. All right, anyway, so the movie was released July 4th, I believe, and it's done incredibly well. It's really racked up tremendous dollars at the box office. And so next I'm going to play for you a clip from another reporter that I really like. Her name is Emerald Robinson. She's excellent, actually, very thorough, and you can find her on Instagram. And then from there, it's going to go into the beginning of some of the negative stuff that's come out, and you'll hear from a person that got interviewed on CNN, and give that a listen, and then we'll chat that. And then I'm going to play some other things that are just going to blow your mind.
The film Sound of Freedom is topping the box office charts and is sending the corporate media into panic. The film, which highlights the child sex trafficking crisis, is based off an actual story of one HSI agent looking for missing children in South America. But it's 2023, and the corporate media is now linking people in films that raise awareness for child sex trafficking victims as conspiracy theorists. The Washington Post, Rolling Stone, The Guardian, and more all link the film to QAnon.
And The Sound of Freedom does focus on a real issue of sex trafficking. But that theme, it's sort of like that kernel of truth that feeds the QAnon conspiracy theory. Tell us how those two things work together.
These films are created out of moral panics. They're created out of bogus statistics. They're created out of fear. And with something like Sound of Freedom, it specifically is looking at QAnon concepts of these child trafficking rings that are run by the high-level elites, and only people like Tim Ballard and only people like Jim Caviezel, and by extension, only people like the ticket buyer can help bring these trafficking rings down. So there's a very participatory element. You're not just going to see a movie, you're just killing 2 hours on a hot day. You are helping bring down these pedophile rings and save children. Now, it's not true, but it's a very comforting and it's a very warm feeling to have. This film is being marketed to either specific QAnon believers or to people who believe all of the same tenets as QAnon, but claim they don't know what it is.
All right, so the gentleman at the end was the expert testimonial that CNN brought on, and then prior to that, that was the CNN interviewer kind of setting him up. And then the initial part was Emerald. So, you know, I'm not gonna give you an opinion on it. So I'm gonna lead you to water, and if you decide to drink, take a drink. But you know, that is how CNN, Rolling Stone, The Guardian, and all these entities basically have covered the movie. So, you know, you decide for yourself if that's appropriate or if that's not appropriate. And then when you think about the way they've covered this issue, you know, it's going to be up to you whether you can extrapolate that upward and then start to look at other issues and maybe start to see media bias there. You know, I've touched on media bias a few different times. There's been an entire episode dedicated to it. And, you know, part of the goal of today also was to use a topic that was outside of, you know, the straight politics and help you see how media bias is involved here as well. All right, next I'm going to play for you something I found from a independent journalist this time named Cam Higbee. And honestly, when I found this, I was like, gosh, this guy like summed up so much of my thoughts so well that let you hear from him versus it coming from me. So give this a listen from Cam Higbee.
The Guardian has called The Sound of Freedom a QAnon-adjacent thriller movie. There are no political undertones in this movie. I went and watched it yesterday. The article goes on to complain about the fact that Tim Ballard says God's children are not for sale. I'm not religious, but if your justification for running yourself into harm's way, going to Colombia and freeing child sex slaves is that God's children aren't for sale, who cares? That's good enough reason for me. But the movie isn't about God. It's not about politics. It's about human trafficking, which is the fastest growing criminal enterprise in this country. So why is The Guardian trying to dissuade people from watching this movie?
You know, what I loved about what he said was, you know, I'm not a religious person as well, but yeah, seriously, if you are going to literally dedicate your life, and by the way, one thing about Tim Ballard that most people don't know is I think he has like 7 kids, and 2 of those kids he actually adopted, and they are 2 of the kids that he rescued. So think about that. He adopted 2 of the kids that he rescued. This is insane. All right, lastly, I'm going to end it with this guy, and I kind of hate that I'm ending it with this guy, but I'm doing it on purpose because here is Jeffrey Epstein being interviewed by Scott Pelley again on 60 Minutes. And I'm going to come back to this in another episode, but give this a listen. And then literally there was 0 vitriol hate that he received, but then all those attacks on Tim Ballard and the Sound of Freedom movie. Give this a listen.
Have you ever been convicted of a crime?
Yes. 2 counts, one soliciting prostitution and procuring a minor for prostitution.
Did you in fact commit those acts?
I'm going to invoke my Fifth Amendment right.
How many times have you solicited a minor for prostitution?
Same answer.
So both questions, he invoked his Fifth Amendment right. All right. Anyway, well, listen, that is this episode, and I hope you really enjoyed it. I know it was heavy. I know it was uncomfortable maybe to listen to. If you haven't gone and seen the film, you know, it's something I did see and I recommend seeing it. You know, the movie is not as heavy as you would think it would be. You know, they did a nice job of getting across their point without just making you feel awful during the process of watching it. And I hate even saying that because of how serious this topic is, but that's the reality of it. You know, a lot of people want to just turn their head and look away because the topic is too heavy. But you know what? You can't do that. And again, one of the main things about this episode is it's such a great case study and analogy for other things that are taking place in this world. So All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. And, oh, man, we got to call a spade a spade. We really do. All right. Talk to you soon.
This episode was brought to you by Boost Liquid Vitamins. Wake up, take your Boost, start your day. Drink your vitamins, build your immune system with Boost. Available on Boost.com.